It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello and welcome to the show. Today my guest is Ken Thoreson. Ken's an author, speaker, consultant, and principal of the Acumen Management Group. Ken, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Well, thanks for joining me. So, rather than have me read off your standard bio, why don't you just take a minute to introduce yourself to the audience, tell us what you do and who you do it for.
Terrific. Well, for the last 18 years, we've been providing consulting services and platform programs for primarily the technology area in the small business marketplace. We've worked with major vendors from Microsoft, Cisco, down to individual resellers and partners and small business people outside of the technology sector area. Primarily, I'm focused around sales leadership issues. We look at our clients as if we were the vice president of sales and figure out what's working, what's not, and how to position their organizations for growth.
Got it. So how'd you get your own start in sales?
Well, it's interesting. Right out of college, I interviewed in college for sales positions and was luckily hired and spent 4 years with an organization that really did an excellent job in those days training people.
Which one was that?
At the time, it was a company called Burroughs Computers, and they are now called Unisys.
I didn't realize I'm a Burroughs guy.
Is that right?
Yeah, okay. I didn't know that you started Burroughs.
And we spent a lot of time training, which was great, formally in Detroit. And so I was really blessed to be not only well managed because they had good management teams, but I also was thankful and grateful to go through a variety of sales training programs, both fundamentals as well as advanced sales training.
And do you remember Lee DuBois?
Absolutely.
So just for the audience, that was at that time was I'm not sure it was on VHS. I think it was a reel-to-reel film they showed of this guy that was sort of their sales training videos they used that, sort of like a fundamentalist pastor, I'd almost say, right? Sort of an evangelical type guy.
He was from Louisiana, and he talked about Mr. Big Ears.
Yep.
And made to listen more effectively. In fact, I was vice president of sales running a channel, a large software company, and we actually used some of his material and updated material for some fundamental basic sales training for our resellers. So I know him well.
So what was the impetus for you to start your own sales consulting business? I mean, what were the problems you saw in the marketplace that weren't being addressed that you thought you could address with your business?
Interesting. I had been running as a vice president of sales an international software company with resellers for about eight and a half years. And I realized during that tenure that where I had strong sales managers, I had strong resellers or dealers or channel partners. And where I didn't have a very strong organization. So I started a national sales management association for my channel only. And I realized that was kind of fun. I really enjoyed that. And we spent a lot of time growing the organization around that. And I said, there's a lot of people doing sales training, but nobody really focused around what generally is the weak link in most organizations. So after 9 years of traveling extensively, living in Minneapolis, Minnesota at the time, I thought, I think I'll start my own business. So I started my business right out of the chute with no contracts or nothing in place. And it took off really well. And I've been now very happy. I live in the South at the moment, but it's been a fast 18 years for sure.
So, yeah, you're an entrepreneur. So what's been the biggest sales challenge for you growing your own business?
I think I learned very early on that in this particular kind of business, professional services, that some people fail because they get wrapped up in a project and forget the prospect. And so I learned very early on in reading and talking to other people that you need to spend 25% of your time always looking at your pipeline, prospecting, looking for the next opportunity. So I think that's an important element for any small business is to understand the dynamics of pipeline management, lead opportunity, and how to prospect effectively and how to build relationships.
So, in your work and the companies you work with, is what do you see as sort of the biggest or most consistent problems relative to prospect development and business development, new business development, which seems to be the bugaboo for most small businesses?
Well, it's changed a lot in the last 3 to 5 years, maybe, because of voicemail and because of everybody doing certain things. So the biggest issue is twofold. Salespeople are not very creative, or marketing is not very creative in helping the company or helping the salesperson stand out in the marketplace. And number two, they tend not to have a consistent program. One of the first things we do when we look at organizations who are struggling and clients we get involved in, and we get involved in organizations who are startup brand new, or we get involved in organizations that have stalled out, and they could be $50 million in sales, is they don't have a consistent program of weekly, monthly marketing events, programs, campaigns, etc. They go up and down. And so they either have a poor message and they have inconsistent levels of prospecting activity.
And so, and I agree, the consistency is is key in all of that. So, how do you help them achieve this consistency? Because I agree, I in my work, very similar profile companies that I work with, especially the ones that have stalled, and that consistency has always been the problem.
Yeah, and depending upon the organization, from a salesperson's mentality, we have something we call the 2020 plan, where, and I don't need to get into the details with you now, but it's a program that every week the salesperson sends out 20 postcards to 20 different people. And the second week they send another second postcard to the same 20 people, and the third week they call those 20 people. But they have to do that every week to build up the activity. Very simple program, but it forces the salesperson into prospecting.
So you're actually still in this day and age still using physical postcards, not email.
Exactly. And the reason is everybody uses email, and it's easy to delete. The postcards are unique today. In the old days, everybody threw them away and they didn't use them. Today, they stand out. Oversized postcards. It's a kind of old school, but I found out that email blasts don't work because people either have spam filters or they are deleted easily by the person without even reading the front line.
Right.
And so we try to mix it up and do some things that are different. The key issue is not to do 1,000 names on an email blast because the salesperson will never have time to follow those up. Small bits. I talk a lot about pizza in my speaking area, where I lay out the whole program in 8 different slices, but you can only eat one slice at a time. So I like to keep it lunchable for the salesperson. Now, on the marketing side,
well, I think that's, before we move on, I think that's just great advice for people that are listening. Is maybe they didn't appreciate it. We're talking about sending physical postcards, and now there's services you can use that can help automate some of that. I don't know if you do that or you do handwritten ones, but we tend to think we just get so lockstep, we're in sort of lockstep with this thought that there has to be technological solution to everything we do. And this thing with postcards, I mean, part of the reason I love it is I did that back in my first sales job at Burroughs. I mean, that's how I had a routine that every week I was sending out postcards to a certain number of prospects to invite them to come to my branch office for a demonstration.
Exactly.
And that's how I built my pipeline. And I talk about that in my latest book. I mean, that was my prospecting methodology.
That's why I said it's old school, but it's new school to the market today. And the lazy salesperson will set up an email blast and send it out. The smart salesperson thinks about creativity, persistence in that area. Now, from a marketing perspective, we do a lot of events, and we help them think about thought leadership concepts, where it's not to come in and see my product or come in and let me get an appointment for you. We like to schedule an event the first Thursday of every month, as an example, for breakfast, where we'll have a topic that would be pertinent to the prospects. So this gives the salesperson a reason to dial and call people or send a postcard, invite them to our executive forum 7:30 Thursday morning at the certain restaurant. And we'll have a speaker that'll speak about a topic that's pertinent to the prospect, but not a product push.
Right. So if you're So let's put this in context. Let's say if you're a local small business that's, I don't know, could be a, give me an example of one of your clients maybe that's done
Good
something.
example. I worked with a company that was in the restaurant equipment business. They would sell equipment to a restaurant, from a walk-in freezer to forks and knives.
Hmm.
We did a variety of programs for chefs, and we would have guest chefs come in and speak about the latest trends. We'd have a nutritionist come in and speak about nutrition. So restaurant owners could come in and learn about something of interest to them. And marketing, we had a marketing person come in and talk about how to market restaurants. Now, it was sponsored by my client, and it was obvious that it was put on by my client, but we attracted people to the event to learn. And that's the secret in today's world of differentiating prospecting is that people are going to know more about you because of your website. They're going to know about the industry, what they have, but people want to learn more about how to run their business more effectively.
Hmm.
So we do a lot of work around uniqueness from a thought leadership perspective. Kind
Right.
of brings gravity to the buyer.
Exactly. And so in this case, the exposure or the cost or the investment on the part of your client that was putting on this monthly breakfast was the cost of a breakfast for 20 people or something like that.
Exactly, and the marketing associated with that. We
Sure.
don't believe in what a lot of people call lunch and learns. We found out from some basic experience that net new prospects will come to a breakfast meeting rather than come to a lunch meeting. It just is in the middle of the day. It's drive there, come back. It's a 2 hour kind of commitment.
Right.
Whereas in the morning, we can attract people in the morning. Rotary clubs in the United States, the fastest growing Rotary clubs are breakfast clubs.
Hmm.
And so it makes sense to do that kind of prospecting and that kind of an event in the morning.
That's a great suggestion for people listening. And sort of take it a step further then is how then do you work with the sales people of that client that's, let's say, is doing that monthly event to reflect that thought leadership in their own personal platforms?
Well, I don't need to get into the social media side now, but that's an important element. But part of it also helps the salesperson become a value add individual to their prospects because now the salesperson can stop by and leave a calendar of the next 4 events that we have. They're planned out 4 months ahead of time.
Hmm.
So all 4 events are planned out so people can put them on their calendar. The salesperson can drop that off. They're not pushing product, they're providing advice. So the consultant or the salesperson starts to move away from a product pusher to someone the customer may want to see or the prospect may want to see because all of a sudden they've built a conversation. Now, the salesperson has to be able to attend those events and has to come away with a learning experience themselves about how to market a restaurant or what nutrition is or how to use a certain way to present your food to improve the presentation so that they can speak to that level as well.
Mm. Oh,
Now, if they're in a vertical market and they're tight within a vertical market, then certainly the salesperson needs to be able to understand the business challenges and issues that that prospect faces.
well, I wanted to bring that point up because I love the name of your company, the Acumen Management Group, and there's a lot of talk in sales thought leadership circles these days about salespeople needing to have more business acumen. Uh, how do you help them with that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're working with a large technology company right now and have for about 3 years. We developed something called Smart Business Roadmap, and I won't get into the detail. I don't need to get into the details, but that's essentially what the program is. The secret sauce where most people today fail, especially the younger salespeople, is in number one, developing a personal relationship with a prospect, sharing something uniquely or understanding who that person is. Number two, understanding how to perform a discovery, an effective questioning process to understand the business challenges that that prospect faces, what the business strategies are of that company and that individual or multiple individuals, and then what I call connecting the dots, understanding what they're saying, understanding how my product or professional services is going to solve their problems or challenges, and then coming back to what the benefits are that the customer is going to receive from providing that. Now, again, somewhat old school, but what we found is technology, and especially in the younger salespeople, aren't into that. And customers still buy an emotion. I always say there's 3 rules in selling: emotion, emotion, emotion. And you have to be able to understand it and provide it and give it and build it up in the prospect's mind.
Right. Some great advice from Ken Thoreson about just some great tactical ways that sales teams can prospect for new business. May seem a little old school, but it's so old. It's new and completely differentiating, which is so important. You're actually going to get and attract the attention of your prospects with your message. So we're going to take a short break and come back with Ken. Some more great thoughts about how to amp up your sales. But before we go, Ken, I'm going to pose a hypothetical scenario to you, and we'll get your answer after the break. So you have a client that's, sales have stagnated. They've hired you as a new sales manager. They're really urgent need to make a change. So when you came on board, what would be the 2 things you'd do the first week that would have the biggest impact? And we'll talk about that after the break. I'm Andy Paul with Ken Thoreson. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. So welcome back. My guest today is Ken Thoreson. You can find Ken online at Acumen Management. Actually, that's an abbreviation of management, MGMT, so ACUMENMGMT.com. And so, Ken, let's talk about the scenario I posed before the break. New manager brought into a company of sales have stagnated. Urgency to make a change is really there. What could you do in the first week? What 2 things would you do in the first week that would have the biggest impact?
Great question. I've seen it happen, and obviously there could be some variables in the scenario, but the 2 things that hit me first, based on your question, number 1, on the sales meeting that I have the first Monday, if I'm having Monday morning sales meetings, I would change what was done. Now, if this sales manager is coming in from the outside, he would have or she would have really tried to understand what was done in the past. If they come from the existing organization, they would know what was done. But I would change the tempo, I would change the format and the agenda of the sales meeting. Second thing I would do, I would make sure that I made if it was possible in size of the organization, I'd make sales calls every day with different salespeople, because my job would be there to evaluate the market, what's being done, how effective those salespeople are, and begin to understand the sales process. And perhaps using some business acumen, help close some opportunities to drive that revenue. Those are the first 2 things that in the first week I would do. After that, you can get much more tactical into what you can do to drive the business.
That's a good answer, because you also, if you make the sales calls, you're going to understand what the customers are thinking about you as well.
Exactly.
That's a good answer. And we asked this question just so if people have been listening to this. We asked the same question of all the guests that come on board. And the point is that you don't always need to go outside and hire an expert like Ken to help you with this. So it's certainly a great idea, but there are things you could do yourself. And part of that could be, as I said, if you bring a new manager from within the organization, change the tempo, make sure you're engaging your customers, and so on in a way that you really understand what their concerns are. So you write extensively about high-performance sales teams. So in your mind, what is a high-performance sales team?
Well, I think it probably fits in a couple different areas. Certainly activity levels is high performance. I think culture is an important element of high-performance sales teams. There's a culture of expectation, accountability, and success, and camaraderie from that team perspective. And certainly high-performance organizations really are what I call market dominant. They're the team in town that everybody wants to be on. They're the team in the industry that everybody looks up to. They're the team that hires best, trains best, and are actively driving market dominance from that perspective.
And does it start with the hiring?
Absolutely. I believe that. My first book was How to Hire a High-Performance Sales Team. Because number one, it tends to be the biggest challenge in any organization. If you hire, I always say that uh, C sales managers hire C people, B managers hire C people. If you're an A sales manager, you hire A people because you know what you're looking for. It starts with trying to identify what I call the 5 work experiences that I want out of that team and the 5 characteristics, personalities of the person. So there's 10 words we try to come up with that describe what we're looking for. A lot of people hire and they hire people who don't fit those categories, and then they wonder what happened. So next step is the onboarding process, which is a critical success factor for anybody that I see most people failing at. They have not built a tactical, prescriptive, 2-week, 3-week, 6-week onboarding process to get that person up to speed on products, services, company, industry, and in sales management, we like to say inspect what you expect.
Mm-hmm.
They're not inspected to see if they can stand up and articulate the company's value proposition. In our onboarding process, generally the 3rd week, that salesperson has to stand up in front of the president of the company, if potential, or a vice president, and actually sell the company and sell the products and services. So it's a very important element. And then ongoing training on a monthly basis is critical. In our clients, we like to recommend that they build a 3-month or quarterly sales training program that covers sales skills, product and service skills, CRM, operation knowledge, and industry awareness.
So I want to get back to the 5 and 5, the 5 words, or the 10 words in total about the characteristics or the attributes you're looking for in candidates for high performance. Give us a sample of some of those.
Well, let's say for an example, and I work in the technology sector a lot, but I want someone who has 3 to 5 years of experience selling into the vertical market that I'm in, say healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
I want someone who can sell in a regional environment, meaning covering 3 or 5 states, so they understand if they live somewhere how they're going to cover remote states. I want someone who has taken a professional sales training course and has been selling for 3 years or more, if that's an example. So that's what I would call work experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Defining what your successful salespeople have and what you're looking for. It helps you write the ad, if you're placing an ad online or in the newspaper or whatever you're doing, more effectively as well. Number 2, from a personal characteristic perspective, it could be I want someone who can communicate well, articulate well, can stand up and present a product and service. If I have to stand up and present to a board of directors or I have to present to a management team, I want someone who maybe has the ability to write, which is a big issue these days. And we may need to validate that from a capability. Certainly from an energy level, from an ethical perspective, maybe even whether teamwork is important or not.
Mm-hmm.
In some organizations, I can hire what people would call a cowboy, someone who's independent, go out and do the job, turn in the orders, and keep going. In other organizations, I need a salesperson who can work with 2 or 3 people on a collaborative team and be able to work in that functionality. So you look at what you need in that person, in that role, and be able to find the characteristics of that person.
So how do you coach managers to not be lazy in their hiring? Because it's all well and good to have a great job description and bring in a bunch of candidates, but too often, I'm sure you've seen this as well, it's not an easy process. They tend to hire the first person they fall in love with, and oftentimes, they don't sufficiently validate or verify qualifications and so on. So how do you work with your clients to put a little more rigor into that process?
Two steps. Number one, we actually tell people that for every one person you hire, you have to interview 5 candidates. Number 2, we actually tell them, and it's true, that in the first 45 seconds or a minute, you're going to make a decision whether you like this person or not. And the way you ask questions and handle the interview is based upon that first minute. So hold back, be skeptical. And number 3, we have a set of interviewing questions that we provide that person is trained to read the question the way it's written, not to just kind of throw it out there. Number 4, we actually have an interview scorecard. So at the end of the interview, I would grade you, Andy, 1 to 5 on 15 different words, including the 10 that I already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get a numerical score on, rather than saying, well, I like this person. Well, I gave them a 55. What did you give them? Or give her a 47. Why is there a point differential? Number 5, maybe, we have at least 3 people interview each candidate. And we have an interview process that we built so that there's a telephone interview, there's some face-to-face interviews, there's a salesperson online assessment tool that we use. And so just like in a good sales process that is well mapped out for typical reasons, you have a interviewing process for the same reasons. If you follow your sales process, odds are you may win. If you follow an interviewing process, odds are you're going to hire better.
Got it. Great advice from Ken Thoreson, Acumen Management Group. So again, we're going to move into the last section of our show, which is some rapid-fire questions and answers. You can give one-word answers, or you can elaborate if you wish. It's completely up to you.
All right.
So, all right. So the first one, what's the most powerful sales tool in your arsenal?
I think credibility, not only because of years of experience, but people can look at my body of work, and I can give a variety of examples of where and how we were successful.
Name one sales tool / application that you use personally for sales or sales management that you can't live without.
ACT.
Okay, your CRM system.
Yes.
Who's your sales role model?
Interesting. I have 3. One was a Boy Scout camp counselor. He was the head of the Boy Scout camp. Number 2 was a person who hired me, and I worked for him for 8 or 9 years. And 3 was another person who hired me. He was the president of the company, and he was the first man who trained me how to be a sales manager.
What's the one book that every salesperson should read?
Besides mine and yours. That's a great question because there's so many good books out there. Depending upon the product you sell or service you sell, that changes. I'm a believer.
Give us one that you think.
I like one that's Mahan Kahalsa wrote, and he talks about, and I'm looking for it right now in my library, but it's all about building relationships, and I'll look for it dramatically here in a moment. And one that's very interesting was How to Master the Art of the Sell. And if you follow Donald Trump, his book is really good.
All right. So what's your favorite music to listen to psych yourself up for a sales call?
That's a great question. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, so it must be country music.
Is that like a state law?
Yeah, that's right.
We're listening to all of your music choices. So what's the first sales activity you do every day?
I think the first thing I do every day is hit my Outlook and see what popped up. I have a to-do list that I make the night before, and I double check that.
What's your definition of value in sales?
Being a resource for my client beyond the products and services that I deliver.
What's your favorite social media tool?
Hootsuite.
What do you do to keep fit and healthy?
I use a tread climber from Bowflex. Have you seen that on TV?
I have on TV, yeah.
It's a hell of a machine. I call it the Beast.
That's the one that can go up to like a 40% incline or something?
Yeah, and it's a treadmill and a stepper and everything all combined.
Wow, okay. So the one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople is?
What do I need to do to be successful?
What's your answer?
I talk about creativity, persistence, and work habit.
Yeah, I love that creativity. I stress salespeople, you got to think. This is a thinking person's profession. This is not, if you want to have a rote job, go work on an assembly line somewhere.
Exactly. The most successful salespeople are creative. The cool news, and I talk about this in my keynote program, is creativity can be learned. And you can increase your creativity quotient by a variety of areas.
Yeah, it's a skill. Definitely a skill that can be improved. So last question for you. So what do you do every day to improve yourself, whether in life or in work?
Read. I read a business book. I read a sales book. I read a business book. I usually have 2 books going at a time.
And what do you read non-business wise?
I read fun books. I'll read CIA mystery mystery books, I guess I would call them.
Yeah, thrillers,
Brad,
right? Yeah.
Brad Thor, some of those kind of guys.
Yeah, me too. Good escapism. Oh, good. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, Ken. It's been a great show. And how can people learn more about you?
Well, they certainly can go to my website, acumenmanagement.com. You can spell out management fully. You can certainly Google Ken Thoreson. And my blog is called salesmanagementguru.com, salesmanagementguru.com. Someone came up to me one time and said, you're my guru for sales management. I said, well, okay, I'll use that. But anyway, you can find me on my blog, certainly anywhere on social media.
All right, great. Well, I really appreciate you joining us. And remember, for people listening, that if you really want to accelerate your sales, you want to amp up your business, then you have to deliberately, I use the word deliberately learn something new every day to empower you to achieve your goals. And I think we accomplished that today. So, Ken, thank you very much. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.